You know, every country has one, an ultimate rule book. It's that core document that basically sets up the whole government and, more importantly, protects the rights of its people. So today, we're going to take a journey, a deep dive into the evolution of the Philippine Constitution. We'll see how this one document has really defined a nation through, well, everything: revolution, war, and even peace.
All right, so here's our game plan. First up, we'll get into what a constitution actually is, the ultimate rulebook. Then, we'll jump in our time machine and look at the Republic's very first draft. After that, we'll cover a period I'm calling trial by fire. Then, we'll get to the story of the People Power Constitution, and finally, we'll break down the system we have today. Okay, so before we dive headfirst into all the history, let's just pause and start with the absolute basics. What is a constitution, really? And, why should any of us actually care?
The easiest way to think about it? It's like the government's instruction manual. It's the supreme law of the land, which means it's the one set of rules that everyone has to follow. And I mean everyone, even the government itself. No law can go against it, and yep, not even the president is above it. It's the ultimate boss.
Oh, and here's a cool little fun fact for you. Mark your calendars for February 2nd. Why? Because that's Constitution Day in the Philippines. It celebrates the day back in 1987 when the people officially gave the thumbs up to the Constitution we have right now.
So what's its job exactly? Well, a constitution has four really big roles. First, it maintains law and order, stops things from turning into total chaos. Second, it lays down the rules for the government itself. Third, and this one's huge, it protects your rights and freedoms. And finally, it puts a leash on government power, making sure nobody gets too big for their boots. And believe me, this isn't some dusty old document that doesn't affect you. It connects directly to your life, right now. I mean, if you're posting on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, that's it. That's you exercising your freedom of expression, a right that's written right there in the Constitution. It's not just some abstract idea. It's something you're probably doing every single day.
All right, now that we've got the basics down, let's get into the history. Our journey starts way back at the turn of the 20th century, with the very first time anyone tried to write down the rules for what was meant to be a brand new, independent Philippines. So let's talk about the Malolos Constitution, because this thing was absolutely groundbreaking. Get this, it was the first Republican constitution in all of Asia. And it was so ahead of its time. It set up a government with a unicameral legislature. That's just a fancy way of saying it had a single assembly, just one house. It also locked in huge ideas like the separation of church and state, a whole Bill of Rights, and it even made basic education compulsory and free. Amazing stuff for 1899.
But, and this is the really tragic part, this incredible forward-thinking document, well, it never really got off the ground. The Philippine-American War broke out, and because of that conflict, it was just never fully put into practice. A real what-could-have-been moment in history.
And that brings us to a really turbulent period. The next few decades were a real trial by fire for the country. It was this constant, desperate search for some kind of stable foundation, while dealing with colonization, a world war, and eventually authoritarian rule.
I mean, just look at this journey. It's been a long and winding road for sure. We're talking about 6 different constitutions in less than 100 years. But here's the kicker. As we're about to see, only 3 of them would ever really get the chance to govern the country.
Okay, so next up is the 1935 Constitution. This one was created during the American period, kind of like a blueprint for the transition to full independence. It set up a legislature with 2 houses, a Senate and a House of Representatives, just like the U.S. system. And this was a big deal. It introduced the right to vote, first for men and then later on for women. And importantly, this was the very first constitution that was actually fully put into practice.
But wouldn't you know it, history had other plans. Once again, everything was interrupted. This time, its run was cut short by the Japanese invasion and occupation during World War II.
So right in the middle of the war, another constitution pops up. The 1943 Constitution was created specifically for the Japanese-sponsored government. It gave the executive branch a ton of power and went back to a single national assembly. But its reach was, let's just say, limited. It was only really recognized in the areas that the Japanese military controlled.
Then, after the war was finally over, the country went back to what it knew. The 1935 Constitution was brought back into effect, and for a while, it worked. It provided stability for decades, guiding the newly independent republic, right up until 1973, when things were about to change big time.
Now, this next one was born directly out of a national crisis. After President Ferdinand Marcos declared martial law, a brand new constitution was drafted. It completely changed the game, shifting to a parliamentary system. That's where the executive and legislative branches are kind of merged together. And very controversially, it basically legalized all of Marcos's presidential decrees and orders, which really cemented his power. Well, as you can imagine, the deep dissatisfaction with this whole system eventually just boiled over. And what happened next was one of the most iconic moments in modern history, leading to a new constitution that was literally born from the will of the people in the streets. The spark that lit the fuse? The assassination of opposition leader Benigno Ninoy Aquino Jr. That single, shocking event just ignited a firestorm of public outrage, and it all culminated in the peaceful EDSA People Power Revolution, which ultimately removed the Marcos regime from power.
So, in the immediate aftermath of all that, the new president, Corazon Aquino, put a temporary charter in place. It was called the Freedom Constitution. Think of it as a bridge. It was basically a modified copy of the 1973 Constitution, but he got rid of the legislature for a year. This gave the president both executive and legislative powers, just for a short time, to try and stabilize the country and clear the path for a real, permanent replacement.
And that permanent replacement? Well, that's the very system the Philippines has today. So let's finally break down the 1987 Constitution, a document that was really, truly shaped by all the hard lessons of the past. You can really see the history in this one. The current Constitution is built on 4 main ideas, and each one is a direct response to the country's past struggles. It's all about upholding national sovereignty, building in safeguards to make sure another dictatorship can't happen, putting a massive emphasis on human rights, especially after the martial law years, and promoting social justice for everyone.
So how does all of that actually work? How is the government set up? Well, to understand one of its most important features, the separation of powers, I've got a really simple analogy for you. Let's just think of it like a basketball game.
Okay, check this out. The executive branch, with the president in charge, that's your coach, calling the plays and leading the team. The legislative branch, which is Congress, they're the players on the court, trying to score points by making laws. And the judicial branch, the courts, they're the referee, blowing the whistle and making sure everybody plays by the rules. It's this whole system of checks and balances, and it's all designed to make sure no single part of the team gets way too powerful. So, from the early dreams of the Malolos Republic all the way to the safeguards we have today, the Philippine Constitution is so much more than a rulebook. It's a living document. It tells the story of a nation's struggle, but also its incredible, enduring hope for a fair and just society. And, like any great story, the final chapter, well, it hasn't been written yet. The real question is, what's that next chapter going to be?